What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Face Mask Fantasy. We're nearly at the end of the work week. Thanks for coming and hanging out today. We got some rankings today for you. Of the running back variety, and no reveals or anything fancy like that. You can see the rankings that I have right here on the screen. So I'll get into each one. That's 1 through 12 from top to bottom. Why I have the guys ranked specifically where I have them ranked. We'll do a little bit of a dive into each one. Some are obvious, some might be less obvious. These are, I will say, the top 12 running backs being drafted by ADP on Underdog Fantasy. I don't have any drastic differences or changes from what the ADP is dictating and from what drafters are doing on Underdog. So there's no wows or no gotchas. The guys who just missed the cut are the likes of like Rachaad White and Joe Mixon. Both of whom I like, but both of whom don't quite make the cut for the top 12. Before we get into the rankings, we'll just do a couple of, a little around the NFL little tidbits here. Not a ton of new stuff to go over, but there are some noteworthy things happening in the NFL world that we can discuss. We'll of course start with Brandon Ayuk. Requested a trade 2 days ago from the San Francisco 49ers. He is clearly unhappy with the direction that contract extension talks have gone between him and the team. He hasn't demanded a trade. He just requested a trade. So how likely that is, how serious it is, the odds are that both sides come to an agreement eventually. All of that, that still exists. And I would still probably put the likelihood that he gets traded quite low. A similar development took place with San Francisco and Deebo Samuel a couple years ago. They ultimately were able to come to an agreement on a contract extension. San Francisco is one of the teams squarely in the conversation as a Super Bowl favorite. And Brandon Ayuk is a huge piece of what they do on offense. So they have a lot of high-profile players on their team making a lot of money. So kudos to them for, having these tough decisions to make. Like how many of these stars can we retain? So they'll have to navigate that. But Brandon Ayuk is one of the main pieces of what should be an offense, a team overall that contends for a Super Bowl, I would still think Ayuk and the team find some sort of middle ground. San Francisco doesn't want to lose him. They did just draft Ricky Pearsall in the first round. Whether there's any type of direct correlation would be an educated guess, I suppose, but it's not. There's no way of knowing that San Francisco planned for this, because Brandon Ayuk is an established, at this point, enough people around the league consider him to be an upper echelon top 12 to 15 wide receiver, and as you know, ESPN ranked him as a top 10 wide receiver. So you don't run your Super Bowl hopes out there with a rookie. Even if he was drafted in the first round, you don't hang your hat on that over an established player and a big-time playmaker like Brandon Ayuk. So I think that they'll come to some sort of agreement. We've heard talks about Cleveland could be in the market for a wide receiver. The Jets are in the market for a wide receiver. There are several other teams. You would think that if they actually were to kick the tires on such a move, that it would be to the other conference, be to the AFC. I would say there's maybe a 10% chance at this point that he gets traded. I would still bet on Brandon Ayuk being a 49er week 1. We'll, of course, see how that plays out. The other piece of news is the Ravens put Keaton Mitchell on the PUP list ahead of training camp. Again, training camp is in just 1 week. But Keaton Mitchell suffered a torn ACL late in the season last year. We'll start the training camp on the PUP list. We'll see how he progresses through training camp and into the preseason. Justice Hill would be a guy that I've mentioned his name before. Justice Hill would be a last round flyer at running back that I would be willing to take a chance on in my drafts. Especially if you end up with Derrick Henry. Just grab that insurance policy for peace of mind. And Derrick Henry is one of these, it does crack the top 12 running back rankings going into the season. So you want to protect those investments when it makes sense to do so, where it makes sense to do so, and when it doesn't cost you too much to go out of your way to make that happen. Keaton Mitchell starts on the PUP list. Justice Hill is a veteran that has been with Baltimore for several years now. I got to think he's going to be a dude that gets in there and regularly earns opportunities, mixes in for touches. Again, speaking of teams with Super Bowl aspirations, I just got done talking about the 49ers. The Ravens are right up there too. Baltimore just hosted the AFC Championship game. So I bring this up from the perspective of Justice Hill because they're most likely not going to want to run Derrick Henry into the ground over the course of an 18-game season, 17-game, 18-week season. They're going to want to find opportunities to spell Henry, keep him fresh for what they would expect to be a postseason run, a lengthy postseason run. The Ravens don't want to give the ball to Derrick Henry 25 times from week 1 to week 8. They want to be able to give the ball to him 20 times, 20 to 25 times in the stretch run and into the playoffs. So how do you do that? You spell him. You keep him fresh. I feel like a guy like Justice Hill is a prime candidate for that, who is flying absolutely under the radar. He's an 18th round pick in best ball, which, by the way, speaking of best ball, I did put a poll up in the live chat if you guys would be interested to see me do a best ball. After the rankings, I can make that happen. But Justice Hill can be is a last-round pick. 18th round selection in best ball, which means he's not getting drafted or in 10 and 12 team leagues. If you end up with Derrick Henry, that would be my last round pick. would be Justice Hill. Again, Keaton Mitchell, placed on the PUP list, recovering from a torn ACL suffered late in the season last year. We'll see how he recovers. We'll see what the progression is as we move through training camp and into the preseason. Justice Hill, late round flyer that I would be willing to take a shot on. All right. I think those are the main news and notes. Speaking of Ayuk, Ricky Pearsall was placed on the NFI list, so he suffered an injury away from the team. It didn't sound like it was major. We'll keep an eye on that. Again, on the off chance, I would say the highly unlikely chance that Brandon Ayuk does get traded. Obviously, Ricky Pearsall's prospects as soon as this year go through the roof. I'm not putting a whole lot of stock into that, though. But just worth mentioning. All right. Let's get into it. Top 12 rankings, running back rankings for the 2024 season. No surprises here. Christian McCaffrey. He's the first overall pick in one quarterback leagues. Was the runaway RB1 last year. I'm using half PPR as the template for scoring. If you play standard or play PPR, you'll obviously, we can talk about the correlations there, but half PPR is the most popular scoring format these days. I'll utilize that for the purpose of the rankings and the conversation. But with Christian McCaffrey, it doesn't matter the scoring. He was the RB1 by a wide margin in all formats, even in standard. Obviously, he's a major PPR monster as the elite pass catching running back in the league. Even in standard scoring, the runaway RB1, he has to be listed as the RB1 once again. 357, almost 358 total points in half PPR scoring last year. Averaged 22 half PPR points per game. Did it on the back of 417 touches, including the postseason. That would be my one drawback with Christian McCaffrey is the workload that he sustained last year and if it can carry over into another year. He did have a significant workload during the 2022 season, and it didn't matter for his 2023 output. Just noting it, just calling it out there. But this is a 49ers offense that ranked second in yards per game last year. Everything is still mostly intact. We'll, of course, again, see what happens with Brandon Ayuk. I do not expect him to be traded. San Francisco returns and retains all of their star players on offense in all likelihood. The engine runs through Christian McCaffrey. You figure he'll see another 300-plus touches again during the regular season. The 400 touches were eclipsed as a result of their playoff run. So you can expect another 300-plus during the regular season. The 400-touch threshold, I bring it up because it has historically been an Achilles heel for running backs who clear 400 touches in a season, and then they often follow it up with a season where, by their standards, they struggle. Whether it's regression or injury, that's the most common issue. The 400 touch threshold has often been something that has proven it should give you some pause from one year to the next. McCaffrey himself, after his 2019 season with Carolina, which was the record-breaking season, 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving, he cleared 400 total touches that year. He followed it up with a season where he only played 3 games. Still averaged, I think, 30 points a game in those 3 games, but he only played 3 games, 3 or 4 games. He was injured. He wasn't even in and out of the lineup. He was just out of the lineup. Injured for the vast majority of the season, missed most of it. Was the consensus 101 that year, the 2020 season, and it was a miss. It didn't work out. It didn't work out for anybody who selected him. I don't think he played again after like week 9 or week 10 that year. So it's noteworthy. It's something you want to keep an eye on. That being said, Christian McCaffrey is excellent. It would be asinine to put him at anywhere else other than 1. It would be asinine to put anyone else above him after a runaway overall RB1 season in 2023. And for whatever, for what it's worth, we're 2 years removed from it, but he was the RB2 overall in 2022. So McCaffrey's king of the castle at the position. Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, they're younger. It's the young man's position within a young man's game. So obviously trending toward and targeting youth is a smart play, a safe play, especially at running back. But what McCaffrey does, 3 down back, workhorse, bell cow, there's not even a handful of them anymore in the NFL. He's one of them. On one of the best offenses in the NFL. You can't rank him anywhere other than 1. After this, it's kind of like between 2 and 3. It's personal preference. Breece Hall has an ADP of 8. Bijan has an ADP of 6.9, essentially 7. It's dealer's choice. It's who you prefer. I have Breece Hall ranked 2nd. I have Bijan ranked 3rd. You're going to have people rank Bijan 2nd. You might have some people rank Bijan 1st, and you understand, you get the sentiment, but I can't put McCaffrey anywhere other than 1st, even with the concern of the 400 touches, because he had a significant workload in 2022, and he was just fine in 2023. So the 400 touch concern is not – it's something that should be noted, but it's not a one-size-fits-all. Can't just automatically assume, like, oh, well, he cleared it, so there's no way that something doesn't happen to him this year. You just can't operate that way. I have Breece number 2 over Bijan. They both get quarterback upgrades. Obviously, we expected Breece Hall to have Aaron Rodgers last year, but he didn't. So you can consider it an upgrade. And Bijan gets Kirk Cousins over Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke, the lackluster options that Atlanta trotted out there last year. Not to mention, Bijan was in what felt like a 50-50 split, 45% split with Tyler Algier. That should course correct with no more Arthur Smith in Atlanta. Tyler Algier should retain a role. He has proven that he has earned that. He is deserving of opportunities, but not to the level of what he received last year at the expense of taking Bijan, the 8th overall pick in the draft, off the field as frequently as they did in 2023. That would be ludicrous. So again, if you expect Bijan to get the 70% snap share that he probably should have received last year, the quarterback play will be better, therefore the offense will be better. It's understandable to want to have Bijan 2. Again, some may have him 1. I'll put Breece 2nd overall. He gets Aaron Rodgers back. Aaron Rodgers, historically, the running back who has played with Aaron Rodgers, that's mostly been Aaron Jones, has produced excellent fantasy seasons. And Breece, again, Bijan was hamstrung due to a situation that was out of his control, but Breece actually, cleared him in fantasy points per game on an equally brutal offense. One had, Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke. Another one had Zach Wilson. One had crap and the other had other crap. Lackluster offenses. And Breece Hall, remember, was coming into the season with what was expected to be a reduced workload coming into the year. They signed Dalvin Cook. Breece was coming off the torn ACL. He suffered his rookie year. The expectation was he was going to be eased in. Finished scoring almost 15 points per game, which was tied for the RB6 with Travis Etienne in points per game, not in total points. And this is an offense that we just expect they should be in the red zone more frequently because it's going to be a significant quarterback upgrade. Aaron Rodgers, even in coming off a torn Achilles, advanced age, is still a future Hall of Famer is a future Hall of Famer, right? Not to mention, as it currently stands, there's not a ton of proven receiving talent on this offense after Garrett Wilson. Breece Hall can catch the ball. You got to imagine he's going to see a lot of looks as a receiver in addition to he's going to get the bell cow role. Dalvin Cook is gone, and there are no questions for Breece Hall about what is his workload going to look like in the beginning of the season because there's no injury that he is rehabbing from like he was at the start of last year. Both of the quarterbacks, again, they're both upgrades, but also they're both coming off of serious injuries. Rodgers was suffered a couple of months prior to Cousins, so I guess he's a little bit closer to, I guess he's a little farther along in his recovery. He kept teasing that he might return at the end of the year last year. I think that was silly of him. There was never any expectation that Rodgers was going to return after suffering a torn Achilles in the same year as a 39-year-old quarterback. Nevertheless, he still teased it. Some indication that he would be ready sooner than expected. All this to say, there shouldn't be any limitations for Rodgers week 1. Cousins, on the other hand, I think he suffered his injury week 7 or 8. So, his recovery timeline started a little later. I don't think we're expecting any issues for Cousins as far as the start of the season. It will be his first year in Atlanta. It'll be Rodgers' first real opportunity to play with the Jets, but it at least is his second offseason. So maybe a little bit more continuity. He's working, Nathaniel Hackett is the offensive coordinator, so he's been working with him for years. So it's not like there's anything new just because Rodgers is on a new team. It still can be considered new because he didn't play last year. He played 4 snaps last year. Not as big of a concern with Rodgers, whereas Cousins will be installed into a new situation that is still fresh, still newer than what Rodgers is entering in New York. Where'd my stuff go? There we go. Both offenses were pretty bad last year. The Falcons were actually a little better. They were 17th in the NFL in yards per game. The Jets were 31st. So you could argue that the Falcons have a little bit more of a foundation to work with, a little bit more of a positive foundation to work with, having been closer to middle of the pack and adding Kirk Cousins, whereas the Jets were at the bottom. They were at 31st. The only team they were worse than was the Panthers, who that's on the record now with how abysmal their season was. So not great company, but opportunities should be funneled to the studs that they have on the offense. And there's only two of them. It's Garrett Wilson and it's Breece Hall. And we need to see, like, the final thought here, as excellent as Bijan is, I mean, I've got him ranked as the RB3, so clearly I don't feel badly about him. I'm happy to end up with him in any opportunity I have where I don't have to reach for him. But we need to see definitively, I think this will happen, but we still need to see it. We need to see that he will not be in any type of, like, extreme timeshare with Tyler Algier. I don't think he will be. I think the Falcons will course correct from, the horrendous coaching of Arthur Smith. I think they will fix that. They drafted Bijan 8th overall. He's a generational talent at the position. As solid a player as Tyler Algier is, you don't take Bijan Robinson off of the field 45% of the time to give opportunities to Tyler Algier. That's just crazy. So I do think the Falcons will course correct there. But we need to definitively see it for me to put Bijan over Breece. We're splitting hairs. I don't want to act like there's any type of significant gap between Bijan and Breece. There isn't. There's been a number of best balls I've done this year where Breece Hall was on the board and I took Bijan Robinson. Mixing it up. Maximize your opportunities. Maximize your ceiling for all of the best balls that you enter. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. But at the end of the day, when it comes to just ranking one ahead of the other, I opted for Breece. The explosiveness, he should be the bell cow. Dalvin Cook is gone, and he gets Aaron Rodgers back. I'll take my chances on Breece in a Jets offense where their complementary pieces are probably not quite as good as the Falcons, which leads me to want to believe that Breece gets just a few more opportunities without a definitive, clear-cut RB2 on the Jets to spell him more than occasionally, whereas it's possible Tyler Algier still mixes in more than we would prefer to see him. What's going on, Alex? Good to see you, man. And yes, this is, happy to take questions as I move through this. I see an ask about where is James Cook. James Cook is not an RB1. Not in that Bills offense where Josh Allen is the goal line running back. What did James Cook have last year? 2 touchdowns? I like James Cook. He's a good player. But he only had 2 touchdowns last year. And Josh Allen didn't go anywhere. I know the receivers did. Stephon Diggs is gone. Gabe Davis is gone. I understand that. So maybe he gets a few more opportunities as a receiver. But the touchdown upside limits James Cook because Josh Allen is the goal line short yardage running back, so to speak, for the Bills offense. And Justice Hill is, not awful. He averages over 4.5 yards a carry for his career. So that's just, there's no basis behind that. And, I'm not talking about don't draft him in the 10th round. You can draft him in the last round as an insurance policy for Derrick Henry because Keaton Mitchell is hurt. That's it. I mean, everything's relative. There's no basis to call him awful. And I'm not some Justice Hill stan. I'm just looking at opportunities that make sense from a bird's eye view when it comes to cheap, free essentially depth, running back depth. If he doesn't work out, then you just drop him. He was a 15th round draft pick anyway, and in best ball it's 18th round. So it's just mainly especially if you end up with Derrick Henry. Protect your investments. That's all. But thanks for tuning in. Happy to, always happy to have a conversation about this stuff. So Breece 2, Bijan 3, splitting hairs. If you want to put Bijan over Breece, that's fine. I think they're both excellent. They're both young. They're both big-time playmakers. They're both explosive, and they should both be playing in significantly better offenses next year. I just slightly prefer Breece because more opportunities by a hair should be funneled to him because the complementary pieces on the Jets offense are not as strong as the complementary pieces on the Falcons offense. And last thing I'll say about James Cook, I can't rank him an RB1 when he on a great offense last year, he was the RB19 in points per game. He's good. He's a really good player. The touchdown upside limits him. That's my... Cook would be an RB... He's in the RB13, 4. He's with Rashad White and Joe Mixon. That RB13, 14, 15 range. So he's right there. He's right there. I don't have him down at RB20. That would be silly. All right, let's keep it moving. This is where I do have a slight difference. I have one guy ahead of the other where there's, a little bit of a distinction between the ADPs, Jahmyr Gibbs and Jonathan Taylor. Gibbs is going 4th overall in underdog drafts over Jonathan Taylor, who is more of a early to, mid-second round pick. I regularly see him fall toward the bottom half of the second round, which I think is way too late. The difference between Taylor and Gibbs has nothing to do with talent. It just has everything to do with opportunity. Taylor's a bell cow. Gibbs splits work with David Montgomery. They're both awesome. But Taylor is the team's bell cow. They let Zach Moss walk in free agency. There's no issues from an offseason headache perspective with Jonathan Taylor this year like there was in 2023. There's no contract issues. He's going to come into, he's coming into the season. No off-field problems. No rift between him and the team. Anthony Richardson is healthy. Taylor is the guy, whereas Gibbs, as explosive and awesome as Gibbs is, we can't expect David Montgomery to he's not going to just go away. He's not just going to disappear. They're going to split work. The two of those guys are going to split work. Whereas Taylor, it's just him. Who the Colts have behind Jonathan Taylor, it's the likes of Evan Hall. They don't even have Deion Jackson anymore. Trace Sermon, Evan Hall, Tyler Goodson. Those are the names behind Jonathan Taylor on the depth chart, whereas Jahmyr Gibbs will be contending with David Montgomery. And that's, again, the difference. Some people are going to have Gibbs ahead of Taylor because he's more explosive. Jared Goff, I just got done talking about touchdown vulturing from the quarterback position. Anthony Richardson is more likely to do that to Taylor than Jared Goff is to somebody like Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs is more explosive. Didn't have injury, whatever. He missed one game, I think, or 1 or 2 games last year to injury. Taylor missed 4. A little bit more tread on the tires. And he's coming off a down season by his standards. Taylor is. But again, Taylor's the bell cow. He finished 8th at the position in points per game and half PPR. Taylor did. Again, he missed the first 4 weeks of the season due to a contract dispute. Got off to a bit of a slow start. His first 2 weeks were a little meh, a little lackluster, especially that first week. But from weeks 7 to 12, the bye week was in there, so one week not played. But the other 5 weeks he played, he cleared double-digit fantasy points. He cleared 10 fantasy points in half PPR all 5 of those weeks, and in 4 of those weeks, he cleared 14. Missed the next 3 weeks with an ankle injury, came back for the fantasy playoffs, and not the first week. Week 15 he was out, but week 16 and week 17, especially week 17 championship week, he gave you 17 points. That's huge. Now he's coming in healthy, no off-season concerns. Anthony Richardson is back, so it's a double-edged sword. Yes, he could vulture touchdowns, but also he's just going to elevate the offense in general. The offense is just going to be better. For Gibbs, the Lions, we expect them to be an elite offense as well. Better offensive line. Both are expected to have a good offensive line, but the Lions have a better offensive line. The Lions were 3rd in the NFL in total offense. The Colts, I think, they were like middle of the pack. They were 15th, so they were just above average, but that was with Gardner Minshew most of the year. So you expect them to finish better than that, with obviously we're assuming everything here, but with a healthy Anthony Richardson, they will be better than 15th. They should be closer to 10th. They should be closer to the top 10. Off-field issues, contract issues for Taylor are behind him. He's entrenched as the clear-cut bell cow for the offense, for the backfield, I should say, whereas Jahmyr Gibbs has to split work with David Montgomery. That's why I have Taylor ranked as RB4 and Gibbs ranked as RB5. They're both excellent, but splitting hairs when push comes to shove, if I can only pick one of them, give me the guy who I know is going to get the lion's share of opportunities. And in this conversation, it's not the Lion who's getting the lion's share. It's the Colt in Jonathan Taylor. And I gave you the Taylor's points per game. He was 8th overall. Gibbs was 11th overall in points per game. I think he was the RB10. I have the statistic right there. He was the RB10 in total points and the RB11 in points per game. So Jahmyr Gibbs was a low-end RB1. So we're vaulting him now into top 5 expectations. Not only ranking him 5th overall, but the ADP indicates it as well. We're expecting more opportunities, more work from Gibbs that will lead to an elite finish at the running back position. And I think that will happen. But David Montgomery is not going to just go away. Should he get fewer opportunities because Jahmyr Gibbs is just that much more explosive? Yes. Yes. And I like David Montgomery. He's a good player. He's more than good. He's a really good player. Really good NFL running back. Rock solid asset for that Lions offense. Jahmyr Gibbs is their home run hitter, though. You would think he gets more opportunities in his sophomore season. The drafters are expecting it based on his ADP. Finished as a low-end RB1 as a rookie. We're expecting him to take another step forward as a sophomore in a great Lions offense. Hence why he's, I have him top 5. Some people have him top 4. Splitting hairs, I'll take the bell cow over him, and that's why I have Taylor ranked 4th instead of 5th. After those 5, there's a drop-off in ADP. There's a run on wide receivers in the second round after Taylor gets drafted, and sometimes that run happens before Taylor gets drafted. At least in best ball. It's probably not going to happen in redraft leagues. But after that, there is a drop-off, and then you get Saquon, who's going around 21, which is like the last 2 or 3 picks. It's the turn in 10-team leagues, and it's the last 2 or 3 picks of the second round in 12-team leagues. Saquon changes teams. First player on this list who changed teams this offseason, going from New York to Philly. A better overall situation, a better overall offense, a better quarterback, a better offensive line, better skill position players around him to take the pressure off. Saquon comes in as the RB6 for this year's rankings. He was the RB9 in points per game last year. Again, it was a brutal Giants offense. Daniel Jones went down. Daniel Jones wasn't playing well at all before he suffered the season-ending injury. And then it was Tommy DeVito. Tyrod Taylor missed a ton of time. It was a bad offense. I think Saquon averaged his fewest yards per carry in his career last year, but that was because the Giants just kept handing him the ball over and over again because it was their only option. It was the only thing they could do because they couldn't throw the ball. And anytime they tried to spell him with backup running backs, they averaged like 2.5 yards a carry. So truly atrocious circumstances for Saquon Barkley last year. He still finished, I think, as the RB12 in total points in half PPR, and he tied for 9th in points per game at the position. Now he goes to the Eagles. Yes, they lost Jason Kelce at center, stalwart along the offensive line, pretty much now considered like one of the GOATs, if not the GOAT at the center position in the history of the league. So there's going to be a drop-off there. But there's still enough strong pieces along this offensive line, and it's just been year in, year out, just so much better than what the Giants have trotted out recently. Any way you can slice it, it's a better offensive line for Saquon than at any time he had in New York. Better quarterback play, better receivers to take the pressure off. Nobody's going to be able to stack the box against Saquon the way that happened for him last year in New York. The only issue is, again, he's down at RB6. We have to cap these guys a little bit, as excellent as they are, because of the potential issues with touchdown upside. When you have a rushing quarterback, that plays a huge variable in where we rank these guys. And it's not unfair to expect that Saquon's touchdown upside is limited in this offense. And while that's not, that's just a caveat for fantasy. He obviously wasn't concerned about that when he signed with the team, but for fantasy purposes, we have to consider that. Jalen Hurts, much like Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts is the short yardage and goal line back for the Eagles. They're going to continue to run the tush push. Anytime they get on the goal line, Saquon's not going to be the one to get the opportunities. That is the key difference where in Saquon's fantasy production from going to the Giants to the Eagles. When he was on the Giants, you knew he was getting those opportunities. With the Eagles, now you know he's probably not getting those opportunities. So the yardage should be there. The yards per carry should go up. Better situation, better offensive line. The yards per carry should be much better than it was last year. The problem with Saquon, the reason we can't rank him higher than 6, is the touchdown upside is limited. Quarterbacks that can run, quarterbacks that can scramble, and in the particular instance with the Eagles, when they run the tush push damn near every time in short yardage situations, those are the scenarios that limit running backs from a fantasy perspective. It caps them. It gives them a clearer ceiling because they're not as likely to score as many touchdowns. Saquon is excellent. He's had injury issues in New York. We'll see if that rears its head again in Philly. But the situation overall is the best of his career. Finished as the RB12 last year. We could comfortably expect that he can finish ahead of that as long as, health, hopefully pulling through the course of the season. We can expect better production from him. The touchdowns should be limited. That's why we can't rank him any higher. Nevertheless, after ranking 12th overall at the position for half PPR last year and 9th in points per game, we could comfortably rank him a little higher than that in a much better situation. I have Saquon as my RB6 going into the 2024 season. After Saquon, it's a little bit of a combination of grab bag, personal preference, and uncertainty. You got Devon Achane here, who's everybody's, who's like the darling of the position after the way he had absolute blow-up games last year. You have Kyren Williams, who was the RB2 in points per game last year. Both of those guys also missed a little bit of time. Achane missed 6 games. Kyren missed 4 games. You've got Derrick Henry, who has been nothing short of a top 5 running back for most of his career. But he's older now. Had a bit of a drop-off last year. Not as good a scenario as years past with the Titans' offenses. Now he moves to Baltimore. Similar to Saquon, should be a better situation, but he's older now. And Lamar, again, is a rushing quarterback, is a scrambling quarterback. That's going to cap Henry's ceiling a little bit. So, what happens with him? Travis Etienne was the RB3 last year in total points. He was the RB6 in points per game. Travis Etienne had a stellar season. But there were hints that his workload might get scaled back this year. I think the team likes Tank Bigsby. They expect maybe him to take a step forward this year. Not that we expect him to force a timeshare, but maybe he's got a little bit more NFL experience. He can get in there and take some of the tough carries, just the grind out between the tackles, runs away from Etienne to help keep him fresh for Jacksonville's, for the long view, for the long run. So Etienne might see like a scaled back workload. Isiah Pacheco, I have him ranked as an RB1. He was outside the RB1s in points per game last year, but he was dealing with an off-season injury last year where he got off to a slow start. That's not an issue this year. So, where do you put him? And then there's Josh Jacobs, who was the RB, I think he was the overall RB1, or maybe it was more like RB3 in 2022. And then he had a big drop-off last year on a bad Raiders offense. But now he gets the opportunity to bounce back in a really good Packers offense, an ascending Packers offense that has historically run the ball well, especially recently. So it's where do you put all these guys? And then, the guys who just missed the cut, I'm not going to spend too much time on them because, again, they just missed the cut. Your James Cook, Rachaad White, Joe Mixon. Those guys round out the top 15. They have their warts. Cook, excellent offense, but touchdown upside is severely limited. Rachaad White, not a great ball carrier. He's an upper echelon pass catcher, but he's not great between the tackles. Can he overcome that again for another strong running back finish? And then Mixon, just getting up there in age, new situation, great situation with the Texans. But how does that play out with what should be an excellent passing game? Lots of opportunities and work to go around with the wide receivers. How many opportunities in the receiving game is Joe Mixon going to be able to siphon off? And again, he's a little bit older at this point. These guys have their question marks. They're the ones who just missed the cut. But even above that, after Saquon, I feel like it's a little bit of a grab bag this year. So I kind of ranked this based off of, taking in a combination of career accomplishments, but also just upside and trying to go from there. And that's what kind of rounds out the bottom half of the 2024 ranked going into the season RB1s. RB7 through 12 is personal preference, really. Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson is personal preference between those two guys. Jonathan Taylor and Jahmyr Gibbs is personal preference between those two guys. But they're clearly 2, 3, and 4, 5, respectively. They're top 5 options, all of them. Any one of these guys ranked RB7 through 12, there's going to be people who have these guys ranked not as an RB1, any one of these names. It's a testament to the volatility at the position. Receiver is, that we've been preaching this for years. Everybody, not just me, but like anybody you listen to as far as content creators or fantasy analysts, whatever you want. Wide receiver is just on a pound-for-pound, play-for-play basis, just a safer option to turn to go with over running backs in today's NFL, where timeshares are all the rage. And inconsistencies are more frequent than they've ever been. Those two things go hand in hand. You don't have 20 backfields anymore that just lean on one guy. You have like 4 backfields now that have that. So the back half of everybody's running back rankings are going to be all over the place. These are mine. Achane I have ranked as the RB7, and it's a lot based on upside. Not necessarily, a proven track record. Obviously, he's coming into his second season, so only 1 year under his belt. But he was the RB4 in points per game. Now, that was on the back of 4 monster performances. But monster performances are monster performances. Of course, he had a game where he scored 1.4 points. He had a game where he scored 1 point. He had a game where he scored 3.5 points. He had 2 other games where he was under 10 points. But then he had games of 12.6, 21.7, 23.8, 25.5, and then his nuclear burger week 3, I think it was against the Denver Broncos when he went for 49 freaking fantasy points and won everybody their week who had the stones to start him, which was probably like nobody, unfortunately. He missed 6 weeks due to injury. He's added some muscle, presumably, this offseason, and he wants to run more routes for the Miami Dolphins. We'll see if that comes to fruition. So a lot of this is hinging on a roll of the dice. But if Devon Achane hits, even at his cost, which is around the 2-3 turn this year, you might be able to get him at the top of the 3rd round. You're more than likely in redraft leagues going to have to draft him at the end of the 2nd round, and maybe even the middle of the 2nd round if you know your league mates are aggressive with drafting running backs. That often happens in redraft leagues. You know your league mates better than I do, so you're more likely to be familiar with the tendencies, what they're going to do when it comes to, when draft night comes around. Are running backs are a premium still put on running backs in your redraft league? Then yeah, Achane's probably going to go in the top 15. In best ball, he's more like the top 20. Maybe he even falls out of that and closer to an ADP of around 25. But in redraft, it's more likely that a premium is going to be put on the top running backs. Achane's going to get drafted higher than that. If he hits, is able to stay on the field and handle anywhere from 12 to 15 touches a game, he's a top 5 running back for the season. This is a Dolphins offense that led the league in total offense last year. They've got elite playmakers all over the place. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, his backfield mate Raheem Mostert was the RB2 last year. We obviously expect a little bit of regression to the mean, but that would mean potentially that some of that work, some of those opportunities, some of those big-time plays swing to Achane. Again, if he stays healthy. There's a lot of ifs here. You're definitely taking a risk. But I'm a big proponent of swinging for the fences, and that's why I have Achane ranked as the RB7. He will have his down weeks, but if he's able to maintain 12 to 15 touches a week, which maybe is asking a little too much, maybe like in the 10 to 12 touch threshold is a little bit more fair of an expectation to put on him per week, or on a per week basis. Obviously, there will be times where he can crack 15 touches. He did it 3 times last year. Can he get that number up to 6 or 7 or 8? And then in those other games, 8 to 10 touches a game, but he's doing it with, elite efficiency, making big plays happen with the opportunities that he gets. If that happens, Achane is a league winner once again. Even at his extremely high price tag compared to last year as a rookie. Because the explosiveness, the speed, the playmaking on this offense, the upside is the moon. So it's all upside. I am 100%. I will be the first one to tell you that if he gets injured, then yes, then the gamble didn't work out. But we don't play scared, right? We don't draft scared. We play to win. We swing for the fences. Achane at around the 2-3 turn is a swing for the fences, and I'm here for it. Number 8 is Kyren Williams, and this feels disrespectful after what he did last year. RB2 in points per game. RB6 on the season in total points, despite missing 4 weeks. Kyren Williams had an absolutely stellar year last year. In large part, not just because he was good, but he got the ball a ton. He got the ball a ton. He was pretty much the dude. He was a bell cow for the Rams last year. In a day and age where there aren't many bell cows, Kyren Williams was a full-fledged bell cow for the Rams. He missed 5 weeks, including Week 18. That's not a fantasy week for most folks. So during the fantasy-relevant weeks for the vast majority of leagues, weeks 1 to 17, he played 12 games. He cleared 15 fantasy points in 10 of them. He cleared 20 fantasy points in 5 of them. Kyren Williams was unbelievable when he was on the field last year. And he capped it off championship week with a 29-burger. If you had Kyren Williams on your team championship week, you probably won. 29 half PPR points week 17. And that wasn't even his best performance of the season. That came in week 12. He was a stud last year. He put up big numbers, and he also had a big workload. When healthy, he was essentially the only guy out of the backfield that the Rams gave the ball to. Fast forward to 2024. The team drafts Blake Corum in the 3rd round, who by all accounts is a top 4 or 5 running back prospect in this year's class, depending on who you ask. That's a bit of a weighted statement because it's not as considered as strong of a running back class as other years. I'll just put it at that. Nevertheless, Blake Corum is considered by many to be a top 5 prospect at the position this year. The Rams add him in the 3rd round, and they've been talking about him as if they see a lot of similarities in him to Kyren Williams. So that could mean that maybe they're a little bit interchangeable. Obviously, Kyren has earned the right to still be the guy, get first crack at all 3 downs for the Rams. He has earned that right after the season he had last year. But they added Blake Corum. And so he's had a little bit of an injury history. Kyren missed 4 weeks last year. He didn't play week 18. They were resting him. And also, that wasn't a fantasy-relevant week for the vast majority of leagues anyway. So during the fantasy-relevant weeks, he missed 4 weeks last year. Missed some time the season before that. So injuries have a little bit of a concern with Kyren Williams. Of course, you could you could say the same thing about damn near any running back, but it's worth noting. And they add Blake Corum. So maybe we don't see Kyren handling 25 touches a game the way that we saw last year. And that's what brings him down. Still, by all measures, an RB1. I have him ranked as the RB8, expecting a strong season from him. But I'm not putting him, RB2 in points per game, RB6 in total points scored. I'm not going that high with my expectations for Kyren Williams. Still an RB1. Still clears the RB1 projection and ranking. 8th overall. This should be a good offense once again, led by Matthew Stafford. The Rams were 7th in total offense in the NFL last year, and that was with Cooper Kupp missing some time at the beginning of the year. They were still 7th in the NFL in total offense. This is a good offense with Matthew Stafford at the helm and Sean McVay still calling the shots. You feel good about the pieces in this offense. But I'm not going to put Kyren higher than 8. Again, still a very strong position to be in. You can easily get him in the 3rd round. He outperformed that ranking last year. 6th in points per game, RB2 overall on the season, even though he missed 4 weeks. But I'm not sure we can expect the workload that he received last year with the addition of Blake Corum. Will he still be the dude? Absolutely. But will he get spelled a little bit more often because you would think the Rams now have a complimentary back that they feel a little bit better about than the complimentary options they had last year? I think that's fair to assume as well. Derrick Henry's my RB9, and yeah, it would be cool, Alex, to see him stay healthy and be awesome for one more year, especially in this offense. Greg Roman is gone, has been for a couple years now, but the Ravens have been a strong rushing offense since Lamar has been inserted as the starter. That shouldn't change, but what does change for Derrick Henry is just that. Lamar is a scrambling quarterback who will likely cap his ceiling in a way that Ryan Tannehill or any of the other quarterbacks that Henry played with in Tennessee never were. Henry experienced a timeshare for the first time in his career last year. Tajay Spears got a lot of work, got a lot of opportunities as a complimentary back for the Titans. That could have been a variety of things. Tajay Spears looks like a talented player just in his own right, but also at the same time, this is Derrick freaking Henry we're talking about. Did they take him off the field because they felt that strongly about how good Tajay Spears looked? Or was it just Henry needed a little bit more of a breather here and there than he had in years past? He has dealt with a yeoman's amount of touches. He's cleared the 1,800 touch threshold. That's often and has historically proven to be kind of like a career Achilles heel for older running backs. But Derrick Henry has bucked so many trends, being able to shoulder mammoth workloads year after year after year and not having his performance impacted. This was, of course, when, a few years ago when he was in his prime. As a 29, 30-year-old running back, you're not in your prime anymore, but this is still Derrick Henry. We still have to respect greatness, and that's what Derrick Henry is. He's greatness at the running back position. He's in a great situation in Baltimore that historically runs the ball well with Lamar Jackson. That should continue. The problem is, it's possible that his production is capped. It has a ceiling, maybe specifically scoring, because Lamar Jackson scrambles with the best of them at the quarterback position. And I'm kind of giving Henry the benefit of the doubt this year in a way that I haven't in previous years. He was the RB8 in total points, Henry was last year. But he was the RB15. He was tied with Isiah Pacheco as the RB15 in points per game. So I am giving him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt by ranking him RB9. But again, Derrick Henry has bucked so many trends. He's proven me wrong time and time again as far as being leery of him, being cautious of drafting him. Now you can have him closer to the end of the third round in a much better situation than the one he was in last year. Do the Ravens look to keep him fresh? Yeah, I would expect that. I don't know that we can't expect him to handle 25, 30 touches the way that he did on a per-game basis in Tennessee. He's a little older now, and this is a Super Bowl. This is a Baltimore team with Super Bowl aspirations. They're not going to want to run him into the ground in the regular season. They want a fresh and healthy and ready to go Derrick Henry for the playoffs. So I can't rank him higher than 9, but it's a little bit of a career testament for Derrick Henry to have him here, combined with the improved situation. Yes, he's going to cede work to Lamar Jackson as a scrambling quarterback, but the overall improved situation leads me to have Derrick Henry crack the top 12 rankings. Rounding out the top 12, I got Travis Etienne at RB10, Isiah Pacheco at RB11, Josh Jacobs at RB12. Etienne and Pacheco kind of go in the same, they're in the same breath because their ADPs are so close. Etienne's got an ADP of 44.7. Pacheco's got an ADP of 42.4. So Pacheco's getting slightly drafted ahead of Etienne on a per draft basis. Pacheco's in the better offense. Etienne had the better season. RB3 in total points for Travis Etienne. He tied Breece for 6th in points per game. He had an excellent season. He went over 15 half PPR fantasy points 9 times, including an explosion Week 17 championship week when he had 24.8 points. Huge. Of the 9 times he cleared 15 fantasy points, he cleared 20 points 3 times and 30 points once. That happened in Week 5. He did have some duds. That was the one drawback with Travis Etienne. When he was on, he was on. When it was an upper echelon game, it was probably a week-winning game for you. But when he was down, it wasn't good. Week 2, 5.2 points. Week 4, 8.7 points. Not like so horrendous, but not good. Less than 10, not good. Week 10, 5.4 points. Week 15, 7.9 points. Week 16 was the killer. Was the fantasy semifinals, 4.6 points. It's possible that Travis Etienne lost you your fantasy matchup Week 16. It probably rendered his Week 17 explosion useless for a lot of people, unless you were playing in the third place game, which again, not where you want to be. Had a great year, but did have weeks of 5, a little less than 9, 5, 8, and 4. So he had the down weeks, but when he was on, he was on. So consistency for the most part is not an issue. What will be interesting to see is how believable is the coach speak that they want to scale his workload back a little bit. And I'm not, predicting or saying that Tank Bigsby is some, breakout running back, second-year player who absolutely has to get on the field and is going to force some 60-40 timeshare with Travis Etienne. Not saying that. Don't think that's going to happen. But I do think the team has a vested interest in keeping Travis Etienne fresh. Maybe not asking him to slam up the middle into piles as frequently as they maybe asked him to do it last year. Maybe that's where Tank Bigsby comes into play. So we can still expect a strong floor for Travis Etienne, and I quite like him at cost. I'm willing to draft him, I'll say 5, 6, 7 spots above his ADP. That's probably the guy, relative to the cost here. Travis Etienne is probably the running back I'm most willing to be aggressive on, just because I think his ADP is a little too depreciated. Like, I think him and Kyren Williams are kind of in the same conversation. They both had excellent seasons, but it's possible that their workload gets scaled back. Kyren because they drafted Blake Corum, the Rams did, and Etienne because the coaches said as much, and they have a second-year player that they probably want to get an extended look at in Tank Bigsby. So there's a little bit of trepidation with those guys. Nevertheless, based on the cost and the results from last year, Travis Etienne is one of my favorite targets at the running back position in 2024. He's getting drafted outside the top 40 when I think he should be getting drafted objectively 8 to 10 spots higher than that. So if there's anybody on this list I would actually, based on the cost that I would be willing to reach on based on ADP, it's Etienne. Pacheco is the RB11. Again, he's getting drafted as the RB10, a couple of spots ahead of Etienne. Obviously in the much better offense. Got off to a slow start last year dealing with an offseason injury. That is not an issue for Pacheco this year, so you can expect him to hit the ground running, which is, everybody's favorite joke about Pacheco, about him, his biggest enemy is the ground, the way that he runs. He's an angry runner on every run. We can expect Pacheco to hit the ground running. No injury concerns coming into week 1 like there was last year. And this should be a better offense. Last year, the Chiefs had to start guys like Kadarius Toney and Marquez Valdes-Scantling at receiver. This year, they'll get to start Rashee Rice when he comes back from whatever his suspension will be, but also Marquise Brown and Xavier Worthy. Plus, obviously, they still have Travis Kelce. This is a much better Chiefs offense as far as the skill position options at wide receiver than what they had last year. I say this because, even a Patrick Mahomes-led offense comes off the field sometimes because drives stall out. That should happen less this year. They should be in scoring position more frequently. That should line Pacheco up for even more scoring opportunities. He only finishes, as again, tied with Derrick Henry as the RB15 in points per game last year. But he's not going to have a slow start, most likely, to have to deal with because there's no offseason injury of note. The Chiefs were still a top 10 offense last year in total offensive output, offensive yards per game. Even with their shortcomings at wide receiver, you expect them to be better. You expect them to be good every year that Patrick Mahomes is under center. And with an offense that should be in scoring position a little bit more frequently, you can feel good about Pacheco and comfortably drafting him. ADP of 42. Again, I find myself opting for Etienne a little bit more just on the back of the season that he had last year. But it's perfectly fine to prefer the player in the better offense who has been, quite good to start his career. Averaged 4.7 yards per carry so in his first 2 seasons. Pacheco, 7 touchdowns last year, 44 catches. This is a better team. This is a better offense. They should be in scoring position more. And while Patrick Mahomes can run, he runs when it's necessary, not because he's elite at it. He's good at it. He's not elite at it in a way that caps Pacheco's ceiling from a fantasy production perspective. So splitting hairs between Pacheco and Etienne. If you prefer the guy on the better offense, which is often a smart way to go, I understand. I'll slightly take Etienne. RB3 overall last year, RB6 in points per game, and is a little bit better of a pass catcher than Pacheco. Pacheco had 44 catches last year. Etienne had 58. Finally, this rounds out with Josh Jacobs as my RB12 and final top 12 ranked running back for the 2024 season. This is a little bit of a roll of the dice based on last year, but also a nod to, I just don't think that Josh Jacobs is done. Like, some people think he's cooked after the season he had last year. And make no mistake, Josh Jacobs did regress from his stellar 2022. But that was not a good Raiders offense. They were okay. They were all right. They ranked 27th in total yardage output last year. The offensive line was okay, but they still finished 27th in total offense. It wasn't a good situation. Now he goes to the Packers, who finished 11th in Jordan Love's first full season as the starter, with a lot of young ascending talent all around the offense. And a team that historically runs the ball well. Jacobs is going to a much better situation this year than he had last year. He wasn't good last year. He was the RB18 in points per game. He missed 5 games. Now that includes week 18, not a fantasy relevant week for the vast majority of leagues, but he missed the end of the season. He missed week 13 and week 15 on. He literally was not an option for you for the fantasy playoffs. He suited up for 13 games. He was under 10 fantasy points per game in half PPR scoring for 5 of those games. He had his strong weeks. 23.9 half PPR points week 4, 17 points week 5. 10.3 week 6 is meh, but at least he cleared double digits. 15.8 week 8, 21.8 week 9, 11.7 week 10, 20.5 week 12. Jacobs didn't totally die last year. The overall body of work wasn't good, especially compared to his 2022, which was stellar. But he still had enough strong outputs where at least 4 or 5 times, he probably contributed to you winning your week. That's not nothing. Now he goes from a not great situation in Vegas to a much better ascending situation in Green Bay. Put it all together, I think he's going to bounce back this year. I think he was the RB3 in 2022. Jacobs, I need to look this up real quick. Yeah, Jacobs was the RB3 in 2022 in total points, and I think in points per game as well. He was the RB4. In 2022, Josh Jacobs was the RB3 in total points scored and the RB4 in points per game. We're not so far removed from that. And he still had 3 games last year where he cleared 20 points, 20 fantasy points in a week on a not great Raiders offense. Ran out a combination of Jimmy Garoppolo and Aiden O'Connell at quarterback. A 27th ranked offense in total offensive output in 2023. Now he goes to a team that was just outside the top 10 and should ascend into the top 10 this year in Green Bay with all of the young ascending talent that they have. This is a significantly better situation for Josh Jacobs. He should be maybe he's not quite a bell cow. They still have A.J. Dillon and they drafted Marshawn Lloyd, but it should at least for the 2024 season, it should come as close to bell cow opportunities for Jacobs as it gets. I got to imagine he gets at least a 65% snap share, and 57, 58, 60% of the opportunities out of the backfield. This is a great landing spot for him to end up in. So it's a little bit of, we're taking a little bit of a leap here. But even after a down season last year, I have Jacobs ranked as the RB12. He just makes the cut as a top-ranked RB1 going into 2024. He's got an ADP on Underdog Fantasy of about 53, so you can have him at the late 4th, early 5th round. He'll go a little higher than that in redraft leagues. I think you're going to get a guy who gets a lot of volume at a bit of a discount. I know he probably feels a little risky. He probably feels like he has his warts. Last year was not good for him. But the situation is much better, and Jacobs has proven to be a damn good running back just in general over the course of his career so far. I'm going to go ahead and roll the dice at his reduced cost on a much better offense. So there you have it. Top 12 running backs for 2024. Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, Devon Achane, Kyren Williams, Derrick Henry, Travis Etienne, Isiah Pacheco, Josh Jacobs. If I had to star several of these names as far as guys that I do go out of my way to target, I would say it's Taylor at 16 with an ADP of 16. He's a bell cow. I'm happy to take him 4 or 5 spots higher than that, which is basically like, late 1st, top of the 2nd. Travis Etienne, RB3 overall last year, tied for 6th in points per game. Nearly cleared 60 catches last year. And Calvin Ridley is gone. They added I forgot to mention that earlier. They added Gabe Davis. They drafted Brian Thomas. But Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones are gone, so there's some turnover in this receiver room. I would think Etienne has a good chance to soak up an extra few opportunities this year than he did last year. And last year he caught 58 balls, so, no slouch there. So Etienne is a guy I like targeting at cost. I think he's a guy that should be going 7 or 8 spots above what his current ADP is. And then finally, I'll say Jacobs by a few spots. He obviously comes with some decent risk. Wasn't great last year, but his situation is much improved. And he's proven to be a good player over his career so far with the Raiders. Now he ends up in a much better offense in Green Bay. I'll take the chance on him at his reduced price. So there you have it. Happy to take any other thoughts, questions, comments, whatever you guys have. If you want me to expand on anything, I'm happy to do that. But those are my top 12 running back rankings for 2024. I think I did fire off a poll to kick off the show. If anybody wanted me to fire off a best ball before I called it quits today, so I'm happy to fire that off. I think I got some yes votes in there, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I want to do a best ball draft anyway, so why not, right? You guys wanted it. All right. The yes votes win. Looks like I'm doing a best ball. Let's make it happen, shall we? I'm going to do a fast puppy. Let me go ahead and just switch this over. So again, happy to take any thoughts. comments about my running back rankings. I will timestamp this live stream. I'll probably cut it up and share some individual videos about each name that I covered or that I talked about. Let me you're going to see double me for a second. Let me alter this screen a little bit. It's a little big. And I can get myself out of here. Oops. All right. Good enough. If anyone wants to try to join me, feel free. This is on Underdog Fantasy. We'll do the Fast Puppy. It's a $5 entry, 54% full, so no concerns about this filling up too quickly before we fire this off. Start one quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, and a flex. You're going to see the wide receivers fly off the board much faster than the running backs. And you'll get to see a strategy. I don't know what my strategy is going to be because I don't know my draft position yet, so you'll see what I choose to do as it happens and takes place real time. All right. I'm going to kick this thing off. Let's get it going. Could not detect your location. Well, that's a disappointing I know that you have my location. I forget where that gets set up. They should have my location. I've done this plenty of times. Let me see if a refresh just takes care of it. Okay, scroll all the way over here. Okay, I don't know what that was all about. But we're good now. Waiting for 5 people. Now 2. These things fill so quickly. Do I have the turn? No, I have the 11th pick. I got the 111. Let's see what happens here. Let's see if I can slide this over a little bit. I lost myself. Display capture. Can I? We'll do this later. All right. chalky for now. So I have the 111. Sorry, I was messing around with OBS. I couldn't bring my camera back. It is what it is. Bijan, 104. That's a little, that's not outrageous. It's a little higher than he normally goes. So this will be the guys that I'm selecting here. I assume I still like Garrett Wilson in this area if he's available, but there are whispers now that the Jets could trade for Devontae Adams. So that would hurt his prospects a little bit, but he's still a stud. Jahmyr Gibbs. Well, I didn't think Breece Hall would be available to me here, but he is, and that's who I'm going to grab. I just got done talking about how he's my RB2. I get the chance to draft him as the RB4 off of this particular board, and he's a guy that I would be happy to take 3 or 4 spots ahead of this. So, yeah, I'll take Breece Hall 111. I will not get my guy Taylor because I just don't want to go running back to start this draft. As tantalizing as that would be here. I do need to diversify. And take a receiver here. Wow, Achane goes 13th. That's wild. So this is a little aggressive, a little ambitious for a rookie, but Marvin Harrison's hype is real, and I don't have a ton of shares of him. So let's go ahead and roll those dice. Devon Achane at 13. I mean, talk about being aggressive with who you guys believe are league winners. That's important. That's key. Let me go full screen here. Pretty chalky at this point. I mean, Brandon Ayuk is falling a little bit right now because he's in the midst of a trade request, but I don't think there's any reason to be shying away from him. Debo, understandably, is going, a little higher now because he could be just the dude. But again, I don't think Ayuk is going to get traded. I really don't. Somebody in the back half of the second round is going to get an excellent value. Man, see, you're nuts if you don't take Brandon Ayuk here. I don't care even what his landing spot would happen to be. He's too good, man. He's too good to let fall this far. There is no way. There is no way that I would let Brandon Ayuk fall this far. Ayuk, 27th overall. That's crazy, man. There's just no way I would let him fall that far. All right. I'm up in one pick. I could go Diggs. I don't have a ton of shares of Diggs. I'm a little more concerned about him. after the fall off that he had last year, I do think he's still a really good player. Yeah, I mean, he still had a really 1,100 yards, 100 catches, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns. I know that the situation is a little bit more volatile because it's like, is he the wide receiver 1 in Houston? Is he the wide receiver 2? Is he the wide receiver 3? But it still is what's expected to be a strong offense. And I drafted a rookie wide receiver high, so let's maybe get a veteran to balance that out. And then this is the guy I'm happy to end up with at this area of the draft every single time. I think George Pickens will destroy his ADP. Kincaid, tight end 1. That's crazy. I will be leaving some stud tight ends on the board here, but this is an ascending wide receiver that I believe in big time. "63 catches, 1,100 yards last year for Pickens as the wide receiver 2. Now he ascends to the wide receiver 1 spot, and whoever is the wide receiver 2 is completely unknown for Pittsburgh. The quarterback play might still not be great, but Pickens has produced already with less than stellar quarterback play to start his career. So I'm willing to roll the dice on him, taking another step forward at an ADP that I think he's going too low at. There's my guy Etienne going 43. Again, in best ball, you have to be, you kind of have to be diligent with the way you allocate your resources because there's a race to fill the third wide receiver spot and ultimately the flex, which is where a fourth receiver can go, which is statistically more likely to fill the flex than an RB3. So a lot of people load up on wide receivers early and often in best ball, which pushes the value of running back down and allows you to get some good options later on. Coupled with the fact that I took Breece Hall in the first round already and I only have to fill 2 of those positions, it's kind of a situation where it's like, okay, now I'm hanging my hat on Breece to just be that guy for me every week. And then the other RB2 spot will get filled here and there by 2 or 3 other options that I can get a little later in the draft. And just from that perspective, it makes sense to allocate more resources to wide receiver. If I had gone wide receiver to start my draft instead of starting with Breece Hall, then yeah, Travis Etienne, Isiah Pacheco, Josh Jacobs, the guys I just talked about who've round out my RB1 rankings this year, they're more in play for me in this part of the draft. But specifically in best ball, since I have one and a stud at that in Breece, statistically, the math suggests, the data suggests you want to then be aggressive targeting wide receiver. Because look at the guys who are still available at running back. I like Joe Mixon. I like Rachaad White. I like James Cook. If I can get any one of these guys in the 6th round, I'm perfectly happy with it. But I need to secure those wide receivers first. I have Marvin Harrison, so Kyler Murray would be a quarterback target. Stephon Diggs, so C.J. Stroud could be a quarterback target. Murray is something that I think I like a little bit more just because he's going to cost a little bit less. Okay. I am happy to take Keenan Allen here. Depreciated cost. New team. New situation. Could no longer be the wide receiver 1, but I'm drafting him as my wide receiver 4. The expectations are high for Caleb Williams. So I get Keenan Allen at a bit of a reduced cost, and now let's see what happens here. I need him to let me end up with Rachaad White. Because I kind of don't. Anthony Richardson is excellent and would be a good value here. But I don't know that I really want to take him. I think I'd rather wait and try to get Kyler Murray and pair him with Marvin Harrison. I think that's what I'm going to do. I like Rachaad White as a guy who just misses being ranked as an RB1. They added Bucky Irving in the draft. I think Rachaad White is still a guy that you can lean on as a guy who should get the ball a decent enough amount of times. I like plugging him in as my RB2 behind Breece just fine after grabbing 4 wide receivers from rounds 2 through 5. So I like how that played out. I'm up in 15 picks. Kyler Murray is about 11 or 12 picks away, so I would need to get a little lucky with Kyler. Hopefully somebody doesn't take him. Jake Ferguson, 69th overall, when you already have Mark Andrews. Interesting choice. So I'm going to need, with Marvin Harrison, I'm going to need Kyler Murray to fall a couple of spots for me to end up with him, but that's exactly what I would hope happens, and I end up with a stack. I missed out on Stroud. That's okay. I prefer Rachaad White. I think he's getting getting undervalued with an ADP of in 63, 63.6, 63.7. I'm happy to take him if I had to 10 spots higher than that. All right, 6 picks away. Four picks away, and the 3 people in front of me do have quarterbacks already. That doesn't mean that they won't grab Kyler, but I would be ecstatic to end up with Kyler and stack him up with Marvin Harrison. If that does not happen for me, Jameson Williams is a great target as far as a potential breakout candidate this year. There's some running backs that I like down here. Let me get Kyler, just so I can stack him up with Marvin Harrison. I got him queued. This guy drafting ahead of me already has a quarterback. You shouldn't be drafting a quarterback. That would be a bad use of resources, and he doesn't. Thank you. I will take the stack. Hell yeah. Stack it up in best ball when you can. Always, always, always. And I'm happy to end up with any one of these wide receivers as my wide receiver 5. I mean, I'll take Jordan Addison 10 picks below his ADP. It's a little concerning with the new quarterback situation, but TJ Hawkinson is probably not going to be right this year. Remember, he suffered a bad injury at the end of the year last year. You would think Addison picks up a little extra work now in his second year. If I don't get him, I'm happy to end up with Jameson Williams. That being said, I will take Jordan Addison. I like JMO quite a bit to break out this year, but it's an offense with many more options in Detroit. JMO at any given week could be the 5th option behind Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs. Maybe he's more the 4th option, but still, Addison, it should just be Justin Jefferson, and then that's it. Because TJ Hawkinson is not going to start the season healthy, most likely, and it's possible that Hawkinson isn't himself for this entire year. And if they have a bad season, the Vikings, with some combination of Sam Darnold and rookie J.J. McCarthy, they're probably not going to rush TJ Hawkinson back. So, expanded opportunities for Jordan Addison this year. Although, they're not going to be as valuable targets as the ones he received from Kirk Cousins. So, maybe he loses some efficiency, but he makes up for it with a little extra volume. I'll take him 10 picks below his ADP. Almost 11. Yeah, I'm perfectly happy with that and how that played out. Running backs going a little, not significantly higher, but a little higher than they normally do. $12 picks away. So I'm in this range. I would love to end up with Tajay Spears. who I think is at this point in their career a better player than Tony Pollard, who's an explosive option last year. The breakout didn't happen for Tajay Spears because Derrick Henry played the entire season. This is a really interesting build. No wide receivers through 100 picks for this team. That's real interesting. 2 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends, but no wide receivers. That's super interesting. Hey, I mean, have fun with it, right? These are $5 entries. Mess around with different builds that work for you. He still doesn't take a wide receiver. There goes my guy Spears. This is another guy, Trey Benson, I wouldn't mind having, especially now that I have Kyler. Just like start loading up on Cardinals. No, he just got taken. Damn it. Well, there's some good wide receivers here that I'm happy to end up with as my wide receiver 6. Like really, again, wide receiver depth is important to identify and grab in best ball. They are statistically more likely to not zero out for you. They give you a pretty safe investment to work with. I'll take Tyler Lockett. 12 picks below his ADP. Yeah, I'm quite happy to do that. 8 picks. Sorry, not 12. 8 picks. Still, I'll take the value. This guy can take Khalil Shakir because I know he has Josh Allen. Oh, I have Keenan Allen. Should I take Caleb? Should I just go ahead and lock in Caleb Williams? I feel like I should do that. Get a couple of stacks. I could target Cole Kmet a little bit later as a cheap tight end. This guy is just ignoring ADP. I respect it. But also, that's not something I would do that early. I'm going to take Caleb Williams. I'm going to stack it up because I have Keenan Allen. And just get 2 stacks. And those will be my quarterbacks. I like it. I like it. Again, this can be an open forum. Appreciate everybody coming in and hanging out today. I'll probably be wrapping it up after this draft wraps up. Any final thoughts, whether it's about my draft, general thoughts, the rankings that I shared earlier, happy to take them. Questions, comments, whatever have you. Open forum. But appreciate everybody coming in today, whether it was for 30 seconds or 30 minutes. Hope everybody has some fun weekend plans, or at least some relaxing ones, whatever they may be. This is another guy, Trevor Lawrence. Like I don't know how crazy I am about Trevor Lawrence, from an NFL perspective, but he's getting drafted as if he's like, as if he didn't have a stellar year last year, but it wasn't bad, and he battled through a lot of injuries. I know he lost Calvin Ridley and he lost Zay Jones, but he never really developed a great connection with Calvin Ridley to begin with. He still has Christian Kirk. Gabe Davis leaves a little bit to be desired. They drafted Brian Thomas, top 5 wide receiver prospect this year. Travis Etienne is a good pass-catching running back. Evan Ingram is an upper echelon option at tight end. Like, at his reduced cost, I like Trevor Lawrence this year. I do. I'm coming up in 8 picks here. The running back options are starting to thin out. I don't really want Zeke, but if he falls to me, then that's gone. I'd be happy with Jerome Ford, but I'm not going to hold my breath. All of these guys in front of me, yep, there he goes. I was going to say they could use some running backs. Man, the tight ends are really getting scooped. I might have to reach down and grab Cole Kmet just because, well, one, I have Caleb Williams, and two, the options are starting to thin out. Who does this person have? This person drafted Dalton Kincaid, so it's unlikely that they reach down for a tight end again this early. Sure, let's mess around and draft Jerry Jeudy because he's at a discount now. He's as cheap as he's ever been. I have been in on him before. He has been as disappointing gets, but he's essentially free at this point, getting him with the 131st pick. Maybe a change of scenery will do him some good. See what happens. And I am, in fact, going to reach down and grab Cole Kmet, assuming this drafter doesn't take him here, because I have Caleb Williams and I don't have a tight end yet. I just realized Kyler and Caleb are my two quarterbacks in my Superflex Dynasty team. So I will have a vested interest in this team, in this best ball entry. All right, so this is the depth running back options that I'm staring at. I'm good at wide receiver. I'm good at quarterback. I need some running back depth, and I need another tight end or two. Not expecting Rico Dowdle or Ty Chandler to fall to me all the way down at pick 155. But I'm thinking I could get maybe a Jalen Wright, maybe a Tyler Algier. Nope, Jalen Wright just went, I believe. He did. Oh, so much for that. Oh, man, these running backs are getting scooped. There goes Algier. I'm 5 picks away. I don't really want Jaleel McLaughlin, but I'd be happy with Dowdle, Chandler, or Vidal. Hell, at this point, I would settle for Chuba Hubbard. And there goes McLaughlin. I am happy to not end up with him. I'm not, he just wasn't that good last year. I know that doesn't mean that he can't be good this year, but, I mean, as a depth running back, a bad offense, there's question marks all over how that backfield will shake out. All right, well, at least I'll get Dowdle or Chandler. I'm actually quite happy that played out. There goes Dowdle, so I will take Chandler. Should maintain a role on a Vikings offense that might run the ball a little bit more with new quarterbacks in Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy, the rookie. Aaron Jones is still good, but a little longer in the tooth now. Missed a little bit of time last year, so Chandler could get some opportunities. And I am quite happy to end up with either Vidal. I'll take Vidal or Chuba Hubbard here as just like some running back depth. I'll take Vidal. Just some cheap running back depth options behind stalwarts in Breece Hall and Rachaad White. I followed a chalky strategy for best ball this year. I went hard on wide receiver, drafted Breece Hall 11th overall, and then kind of chilled with the idea of, remember, you're always with best ball with these entries, you're drafting for your ceiling. You're not drafting to play it safe. So the priority is filling out that flex and that third wide receiver spot more so than filling out that second running back spot, or utilizing an RB3 or RB4 to lean on to fill out the flex, because just statistically, it's more likely that a wide receiver does that for you. So targeting wide receiver early and often, that happened in this draft. There were several wide receivers that by ADP, they fell to me, so I feel like my depth is filled out nicely. Marvin Harrison, Stephon Diggs, George Pickens, Keenan Allen, Jordan Addison, Tyler Lockett, Jerry Jeudy, and didn't have to reach on any one of them. Feel good about that. I drafted Cole Kmet a little high, but only because I have Caleb Williams. Stack it up in your best ball when you have the opportunity to do so in best ball. There's some more running backs down here that I'm happy to end up with. Roschon Johnson, Khalil Herbert has been the subject of trade rumors. So if that were to happen, Roschon Johnson's ADP would go way up as a compliment behind DeAndre Swift. I could go Michael Wilson and get an 8th wide receiver and add another guy that Kyler throws the ball to, and again get another stack. But I went kind of thin on running back, so I need to make sure that I don't completely shy away from that. And I still only have one tight end, so I need to make sure I get a couple other options there. So as nice as it would be to add Michael Wilson, logistically it probably makes sense to pass on him. Let's see who's available here in the next 5 picks or so. I just want to see who this person's wide receivers are. Khalil Shakir, Ricky Pearsall, Jermaine Burton, Demarcus Robinson, Luke McCaffrey. Interesting. Tight end makes sense here. I could go Ty Conklin. This person they went likely. Let's go with some youth. Let's switch it up a little bit. I have a lot of shares of Ty Conklin, so I'll switch it up and go K-Dot. I lost the opportunity to draft Michael Wilson anyway, so that works out. And, yeah, let's go, well, see, Herbert didn't have a bad year last year. You know what? I'm going to switch it up. Because Khalil Herbert is now getting drafted as if he's been left for dead, and he still cleared 100 fantasy points last year. I don't think I have too many shares of him anyway, so let's screw around and mix it up. And I have 2 picks left. Like Adam Thielen is in full free fall. I had to leave him on the board. I'm really strong at wide receiver. I needed to shore up some running back depth and tight end depth. And apparently this draft as a whole doesn't think very much of Adam Thielen, because now he's falling 30 picks below his ADP. It probably makes sense for me to grab one more running back just because I really let things drop off after I took Rachaad White in the 6th round. So probably makes sense to grab one more. I'm set most likely at wide receiver. I have 7. I have at least 5 strong options in here, and you know, with a couple of depth options should be okay. It probably makes sense for me to grab one more tight end. Michael Mayer, I don't have too many shares of him. Of course, he's lost a lot of opportunities, most likely to Brock Bowers, but he was a 2nd-round pick of the Raiders just in 2023. Could be an interesting, like, no-risk player. Oh, and I'm gonna target my boy Justice Hill. Stick it to the man. Like I said, when it comes to Justice Hill, Derrick Henry's a little long in the tooth, and Keaton Mitchell is on IR. Or, excuse me, he's on the PUP list after being placed on IR last year due to a torn ACL that he suffered late in the season. And I think he suffered additional... There were additional damages done at that time, at the time of the injury. So it's going to be hard for the Ravens to rely on him this year, especially early on. So as like a no-risk depth option at running back, I like Hill's opportunities to spell Derrick Henry. There are some decent, like Tyrone Tracy is still like, you know, he's a very tantalizing, interesting option. There goes Roshan. I could grab this guy, you know, the interesting Denver rookie as well. Just don't know that I feel that strongly about that backfield shaking out. What's the update on Juwan Johnson? Okay, so he's on the PUP list. He suffered an injury. He had to have surgery. So that's already like not feeling very good. I don't feel very strongly about that. Let's take a depth tight end who should be his team starter in Jelani Woods. No risk. See what happens. If he works out, great. If he doesn't, it's a 17th round pick. All right. And one more running back for the road. Like I said, I really think this guy is just like is like he's so far under the radar. He's not a bad producer. And he could be the team's RB2 this year. On a good offense. I'll take that risk. So that's my draft. Underdog doesn't love it based on the projections, but who cares, right? Projections this early, when they're not even accurate projections, they take into account as if all of your players scored every week, which is just impossible based on the roster makeup. So take it with a grain of salt. All right, let's see if I can find it. There it is. See if I can blow this up. Okay. From the 11 spot. Again, best ball. If you end up with an anchor running back, the data suggests that you kind of punt running back from there, hammer wide receiver. If you can get a stud quarterback or a stud tight end without breaking the bank, that's a perfectly fine route to go as well. I decided to ignore that strategy and just hammered wide receiver after I took Breece and took some discount options later on at other positions. So the wide receivers are who I'll be leaning on this year. Marvin Harrison, Stephon Diggs, George Pickens, Keenan Allen. A little bit of a mix of youth and veteran options. So ideally the vets can hold up, and hopefully the young bucks can match the high expectations. Then I went back to the well at running back with Rachaad White, a guy I love at cost. I think he's going a little too cheaply. He's going a little too late in these drafts. I don't have him ranked as an RB1. He just misses the cut. But he's absolutely got RB1 upside. He finished as an RB1 last year. He's a little inefficient, inconsistent as a between-the-tackles runner, but he's an upper echelon pass catcher, so he should be just fine. Kyler, statistically in his career, has been a top 5 quarterback in points per game. Obviously, health being a key recent concern. Missing the end of 2022 with a torn ACL and a decent amount of 2023 dealing with the same injury. He did come back, of course, ultimately, and shook the rust off. Now he has a full, healthy offseason. Let's see if he can get back to being that top 5 option in points per game at a depreciated cost. Went back to wide receiver with a couple of picks and then went and grabbed my QB2, Caleb Williams. Again, I drafted Marvin Harrison, so I wanted to make sure I grabbed Kyler, Harrison being the wide receiver 1 that I drafted. So it was a bit of a priority for me to make sure I end up with Kyler. Caleb Williams was a guy I didn't really have to go too far out of my way to grab, and I had Keenan Allen, so it made sense to identify that stack and build it up. Jerry Jeudy, not super crazy about, to be honest, but at pick 130, there are worse rolls of the dice. I'd reached a little bit based on ADP to grab Cole Kmet, but the tight end options were starting to thin out a little bit, and I have Caleb Williams, so I was able to stack it up. And then filled it out with some running back. Pretty much that was it after that, just running back and tight end depth from that point forward with the draft. Because I grabbed 2 running backs with my first 60 picks and then pretty much punted. So I grabbed some cheap options to fill things out. Same with tight end. I waited 135 picks to draft my first tight end, so I wanted to make sure I grabbed 2 more, maximize my the chances that I have guys just fall into the end zone a few times each over the course of the season. So that'll do it. That's my squad. Again, I will timestamp this video with the rankings that I put together. And if anybody has any questions, thoughts about how everything went, you can just reach out in the comments. Thank you guys for hanging out tonight. Good conversation. Hopefully helpful. And it's always fun to kick off a draft. I'll be around. Everybody have a great weekend, and I will see you guys next week. Thanks, everybody.